Welcome to all of you, the students of B.Sc. third year, optional subject Fishery Science. Boys, during last few periods, we have seen the second important commercial fisheries, that is the Indian mackerel fishery. This mackerel fishery, these are to be contribute next to the Indian oil sardine fishery. Last period we have seen introduction, classification and general characters of the Rastraliger canagrota or the mackerel fishery. Now today we are studying the next article, next point of our fishery. That point is the food, feeding and reproduction. Food, feeding and reproduction of mackerel we are studying today. Again, to the total all India marine fish landing, the fishes these are to be caught, fishes these are to be captured both in east coast as well as west coast of India. In these total all India marine fish landings, total all India marine fish production, mackerel contribute 20% of the production from west coast and east coast of India. Those production produced are those fishes these are to be captured from Indian region. In these fish production, 90% fishes these are to be caught, these are to be captured from the west coast of India, and that's why this mackerel these are the important second commercial fisheries we have studying, we have started. Our point is food and feeding habits. Food and feeding habits. Which type of food and which type of feeding habit is to be done by the Indian mackerel. The Indian mackerel is a surface feeder. Indian mackerel is a surface feeder. Yes. Here, Indian mackerel is a surface feeder in the inshore waters. It is to be Indian mackerel is the surface feeder in inshore waters. Its food consisting of the phytoplankton and zooplankton elements. The food which is to be consumed, the food which is to be taken by this Indian mackerel, that food is to be consisting the phytoplankton and zooplankton element. These phytoplankton and zooplankton, these are to be strained, these are to be filtered, these are to be strained from the surrounding waters by the well developed and feathery gill rackers. In this mackerel, the food these are to be taken, food these are to be consumed, that food is the phytoplankton and zooplankton. This phytoplankton and zooplankton, it can be taken with surrounding water by filtering the water. Water which is to be filtered through a feathery gill rackers. Interesting characters. The important character among the mackerel or in the mackerel, that character is the gill rackers. These are feather type. These gill rackers, these are to be developed, these are to be born on the gill arches, and these feathery long pointed gill rackers, feathery gill rackers, these are to be important. It is to be act as a sieve like structure, it is to be act as a screen like structure to filter the water, and those are the small phytoplankton and those are the small zooplankton. Only these small phytoplankton and zooplankton, they can be filtered with these feathery gill rackers, and then these food these are to be enter as a food in the mouth of the Rastaliger canagorota or the mackerel fish. That's why the Indian mackerel is a surface feeder in inshore waters. Inshore water near to the bank, near to the edge of the sea or ocean, not far away. It is to be bank side, near to the coastal side. It is to be inshore water. Its food consisting of phytoplankton and zooplankton, and this phytoplankton and zooplankton food, these are to be strained from the surrounding water by well developed and feathery gill archers. These well developed and feathery gill archers, these are to be borne by the gill arches. The phytoplankton element comprising the food are the diatoms, which are the phytoplankton food which is to be consumed. The phytoplankton elements comprising the phytoplankton food. Phytoplankton, the food which is to be originated, behave like that of the plant-like origin. It is called phytoplankton. Zooplankton, the food which is to be, or the organism which is to behave like that of the animal, it is called as zooplankton. The phytoplankton element comprising the food are the diatoms, represented chiefly by the Cocinodiscus, Pleurosigma, Chitoceras, Fragillaria, Rhizosolinia, Bidulphia, Astrolenella and Dinophysi. In phytoplanktons or in diatoms which is to be present in surrounding water, in these surrounding water, the chiefly food which is to be consumed, the main food which is to be used as a food by mackerel, and that food is the diatoms. This diatom, these are to be comprises, this diatom, these are to be possesses which type of diatoms, which type of phytoplankton? Number one, Cocinodiscus, it is important food material. Then Pleurosigma, Chitoceras, Fragillaria, Rhizosolinia, Bidulphia, Astonella and Dinophysi. All these food, these are the phytoplankton food, these are the diatoms food which is to be present in water, and this food, these are to be consumed by mackerel when in feeding condition, in feeding stage. The food atoms of zooplankton, from the zooplankton which food these are to be consumed, from the zooplankton which food these are to be taken. The food atoms of the zooplankton are made up of varied groups of organisms, and among these organisms, in these animals, the crustacean form the major portion. More food, abundant quantities of food, these are to be consumed, maximum quantities of food, these are to be used as a food, and in this zooplankton food, the number one, that is the crustacean, is the major portion. Maximum amount of food, these are to be consumed as a crustaceans. In this crustacean, which are the important food material? Copepods, first in high percentage. Copepods, these are the first in high percentage. These copepods, these are to be taken in large quantities. Copepod, these are to be consumed. Copepod is a crustacean, and this crustacean, these are to be used as a food on large quantity in first. That is, this is to be first food, these are to be taken. It is to be in first high percentage. Small proportions of another food material, which are small proportions of another zooplanktons, that is cladocerans, then cirripedes larvae, mycid larvae, some amphipod larvae, some decapod larvae, larval stages of Nauplius, larval stages of Protozoa, then larval stages of Zoea, then stages of prawns. Among zooplanktonic atoms of food other than crustaceans, the foraminiferans, polychaete larvae, molluscan larvae, fish egg and fish larvae. All these are the animal food material or the zooplankton food material. Which are the zooplankton food material which is to be consumed by the mackerel? That is major portion copepod first, and next to the copepod other crustaceans, other food material which is to be consumed, which is to be in small proportions. In this small proportion, Cirripida or the Cirripid larvae, mycid larvae, Cladoceran larvae, some amphipod larvae, decapod larvae, larval stages of Nauplius, larval stages of Zuia, then larval stages of Protozoa, stages of prawns. Among the foraminiferans, polychaete larvae, molluscan larvae, fish eggs and fish larvae. All these zooplankton food are the fry fingerlings and egg of fishes. These are also used as a food for mackerel, but it is to be in secondary food next to the phytoplankton. This food, these are to be consumed. Means food and feeding habit. We have seen the food and feeding habit. Food comprises phytoplankton as well as zooplankton. And what is the feeding habit? Feeding habit, these are the surface feeder, feeds on surface food material which is to be found in inshore waters. And food, these are to be comprises phytoplankton as well as zooplankton. From the phytoplankton, Coscinodiscus, Pleurosigma, Chitoceras, Fragillaria, Rhizosolinia, Bidulphia, Astonella and Dinophysi. The food of zooplankton, the first important food is the zooplankton next to the phytoplankton, and from the zooplankton, that is the major food which is to be taken, and that major food is the crustaceans. And from the crustaceans, that is copepod is the first percentage. Copepod, these are to be taken in large quantities, more quantities. Copepod, these are to be taken in large quantities, more quantities, and next to the copepod, remaining small proportions, the remaining zooplankton, small proportion of the Cladocera, Cirripid larvae, then mycid larvae, some amphipods, decapods, larval stages of Nauplia, Protozoa, then larval stages of Zuia, then stages of prawn. Then among these crustaceans, that is foraminiferans, polychaete larvae, molluscan larvae, then fish egg and fish larvae or fish fry. All these are the zooplankton food which is to be consumed, which is to be used by this mackerel. Mackerel feeds on variety of organisms. These are to be feeds, but it is to be seem to avoid some forms. It is to be take variety of food material, variety of organism which is to be taken, but it seem to avoid some food material is also avoided. Some food material is to be not used as a food. Which are these food material? These are to be avoided by mackerel, not consumed as a food. That is the food material which is to be avoided, food material which is to be discarded. That food is Nautiluca, Sagittata, salps, medusae, then stenophore larvae, spinoid larvae, stomatopod larvae, and some algal forms. All these food material, these are to be avoided, these are to be not considered as a food, even though these food material which is to be found in surrounding water. Then also mackerel, these are to be not consumed, not used as these food material as a food. Which are these food material which is to be avoided? That is Nautiluca, Sagittata, salps, then medusae, stenophore larvae, spinoid larvae, stomatopod larvae, and some algal forms. Some algal, typical algal forms, typical algae, these are to be not consumed as a food. Means even these food, these are to be found in water, then also it cannot be used as food by mackerel. Mackerel is pelagic and planktophagous. Mackerel is pelagic and planktophagous. Pelagic, the which is to be swim and taking food from the surface layer of ocean or surface region of sea up to the 50-meter depth. It is called as pelagic region or the pelagic water, and it is planktophagous. Planktophagus, the food material which is to be used as a feed, the food material which is to be used as a food, which is to be in plankton form. That may be phytoplankton or that may be zooplankton. Hence it is called as planktophagus. Planktophagus, these phytoplankton and zooplankton used as a food on large quantity, on maximum quantity. Hence it is called as planktophagus. Feeding mostly on both zooplankton and phytoplankton. The rich plankton crop of the inshore waters following the monsoon. As monsoon these are to be over, as monsoon these are to be completed in the surrounding inshore water. In the surrounding inshore water, abundant quantities of food these are to be available, both phytoplankton as well as zooplankton, and this rich crop of phytoplankton and zooplankton which is to be consumed as a food in inshore water. But as monsoon these are to be over, as monsoon these are to be completed, then this food these are to be completed used, then fish these are to be diverted from inshore water to offshore water for food and feeding. For food and feeding, mackerel these are to be, as monsoon these are to be completed, monsoon these are to be over, the food is to be minimum in quantity in the inshore water, then these fish these are to be diverted, these are to be migrated for food and feeding toward the offshore water, away from the shore or in the deep sea or in the middle of the ocean, and they can use the food which is to be found in offshore areas. Mackerel might supplement planktonic organisms by occasionally feeding at the bottom on dead and decaying fish. Occasionally, rarely, mackerel might supplement planktonic organisms. Occasionally or rare times, rare condition, this mackerel these are to be supplement planktonic organisms, planktonic food materials which is to be found in the bottom, and that food these are to be comprises dead and decaying animals, dead and decaying fishes, microorganisms or other various varieties of animals which is to be dead and decaying to the bottom. That food these are to be taken, that food these are to be consumed, but it is to be rarely, occasionally, not regularly. The two periods of feeding intensities have been observed by number of workers. Number of workers, number of investigators, those study, those researchers, scientists research on mackerel, their behavior, their reproduction, their surrounding condition. These workers, these investigators, these are to be reported that the mackerel these are to be feeds, mackerel these are to be feeding intensity, these are to be observed and studied, and it is to be noted that mackerel shows that two periods of feeding intensities, two times these are to be feeding intensity these are to be observed, one during October to December. First time these mackerel these are to be fed voraciously, largely and abundant quantities of food from October to December months, and second time this mackerel these are to be feeds from March to April months, means 1 month or 2 months feeding intensities. These two intensities these are to be observed. First time October to December, more surrounding food these are to be consumed, and during March to April again second time of intensities, maximum food these are to be consumed, and rest of the period, rest of the year feeding intensity these are to be slow or these are to be lower down, because at this period when fish these are to be more food these are to be consumed, at that time fish is to be either spent or it is to be maturing condition. When it is to be fully mature for ready to spawn, breed the eggs, at that time it is to be restless and feeding less, hence feeding intensity these are to be lower or these are to be reduced. Among the adults, feeding intensity was high during maturing stages. Among the adults, the feeding intensity was high during maturing stages, low in mature and spawning individuals, and again high in the spent recovering stage. Yes, just I have told to you, when these feeding intensity these are to be more and when it is to be less, when fish is to be ready for breeding, ready for spawning to give the eggs, at that time it is to be lazy, restless, no food which is to be consumed. Hence feeding intensity, these are to be lower down, these are to be slow down. First. Second, when it is to be mature or it is to be ready to maturing, mature condition, these are to be observed. At that time feeding intensity, these are to be low or reduced. Feeding intensity is high during maturing stages. When complete maturing condition is to be occur, then it is to be lower. But when fish is to be maturing, to develop the testes, to develop the ovaries, to start developing the eggs, at that time high feeding intensity, these are to be occur. Maximum food, these are to be take. Low feeding intensity, these are to be found in when low in mature condition. When fish is to be mature, feeding intensity is to be low. In spawning condition also feeding intensity is to be low. And again spent and spent recovering stages, that is feeding intensity is to be more, feeding intensity is to be maximum. With this feeding intensities, mackerel, these are to be feeds, mackerel, these are to be take the surrounding food materials. Different workers reported different types of feeding. Different workers reported different types of feeding is to be resorted to the mackerel by different growth stages. Different investigators, different workers, they can report it, they can study. They can report it, they can study the different feeding habits is resorted to the mackerel at different growth stages, and it is to be reported based on the material which is to be collected, material or fishes which is to be caught, captured from inshore water as well as the offshore water, and those food which is to be present in the gut content of the mackerel. Investigators, they can report it, they can conclude that, they can confirm conclusion drawn by these workers, because these mackerels show the different feeding intensities, different feeding habit conditions. The post larvae. First, the post larvae. When larvae, these are to be measured 5 to 6 mm size. These post larvae are said to be herbivorous, feeding on diatoms and algae. Post larvae 5 to 6 mm, and it is to be reported that when these larvae, these are to be observed and it is to be studied, it is to be noted that is these larvae, these are to be herbivorous and feeding on diatoms and algae. Second, juveniles. When larvae, these are to be grow to the post larval stage and the size of the larvae is to be 25 mm, then it's said to be these larvae, these are to be omnivorous feeding. Omnivorous feeding habit, feeds on all available food materials, all available organisms, that may be phytoplankton, that may be zooplankton. It is to be called as the omnivorous feeding habit. The adults, the size of larvae is to be 35 to 224 mm. This size of larva, it is to be called as adult, and these adults are said to be carnivorous, feeding on larvae and juveniles. Larvae and juveniles. And as with this versatile feeding habit condition, the food materials, it is to be truly surface feeders and feeding upon various food materials. Feeding upon various food materials. These various food materials, these are to be consumed, various food material feeding on various foods. That is, hence this mackerel, these are to be show the post larvae herbivorous, juveniles omnivorous, and adults said to be carnivorous because they can consume, that is larval and juvenile fishes. This is to be because due to gill rackers which is to be present. These gill rackers, these are to be feathery, long, well developed, pointed, and as these gill racker fish, these are to be grow, these gill racker, these are to be develop, these are to be form a strong condition. Hence this feeding condition, these are to be changed herbivorous to omnivorous, omnivorous to carnivorous, which is to be reported by number of investigators or workers on inshore waters, on that is near to the bank or near to the shore side of water, and all it is to be reported, that is food and feeding of Indian mackerel or the Rastraliger canagrota. Rastraliger canagrota or Indian mackerel, these are to be seen, these are to be we have studied here. Up to here we have seen, we have completed the food and feeding habits, food and feeding condition. Then next point, please remember boys, which is important point, that is reproduction of mackerel. Reproduction as usual, again we have studied in Indian oil sardine, Bombay duck or other Hilsa fishery. Which is the reproduction condition? What is the reproduction? For our convenience, reproduction of mackerel studied in number of following simple steps. Number of following simple steps for our convenience, for our study. This reproduction which is to be we have studied, we have seen in number of these stages, number of these following small steps for our understanding. The first point, sexuality and size at first maturity. Sexuality and size at first maturity. Sexuality and size at first maturity. Rastraliger canagrota is a heterosexual. Rastraliger canagrota is a heterosexual, but the two sexes are not distinguishable. It is heterosexual, but two sexes are not distinguishable from their external characters, from their external appearance. There is no sexual dimorphism. We do not identify externally. We do not differentiate whether the fish is male or whether fish is female mackerel or male mackerel. There is no sexual dimorphism. Hermaphroditism has been reported, but this is very rare. It is to be very rare, in very occasional condition. Hermaphroditism is to be reported, which is to be found from, it is to be reported, it is to be found where it is to be found, it is to be reported from the gonadal examination. From the gonadal examination, we can examine the gonads and we can differentiate. Two sexes can be differentiated, two sexes can be separated, that is male and female. Male mackerel and female mackerel, depending upon the gonadal examination, depending upon the gonadal observation, gonadal diagnosis, we can differentiate, we can, that is categorize male mackerel and the female mackerel. That is, with this means sexes are separate. There is no sexual dimorphism. It is heterosexual fish. There is no sexual dimorphism. Hermaphroditism is to be reported and it is to be rare on gonadal examination. It is to be, we can differentiate the male fish and female fish. The minimum size at first maturity at Karwar along the west coast of India. The minimum size at first maturity of mackerel at Karwar along the west coast, in Karwar area, in Karwar place on west coast, the first maturity which is to be observed, and the minimum size of the mackerel is to be 22.4 centimeter. What is the minimum size at Karwar? It is to be 22.4 centimeter minimum size at first maturity in Karwar area. This mackerel, these are to be first mature and obtain to complete its lifetime, complete its life age. How much its life? These are to be about to complete the second year, about to complete the second year, or the after the completion of the second year. This mackerel, these are to be spawn, or it is to be ready for breeding, ready for spawning, to give the eggs. When after the completion of the 2 year, or in the last year of the second year, or last days of the second year, or their life frame. Rastraliger canagrota of Andaman Island is to be reported to attain first maturity. Rastraliger canagrota of Andaman Islands or Andaman area, it is to be reported to attain the first maturity. When fish, it is to be grow up to 25 to 25.9 centimeter. 25 to 25.9 centimeter in length. When it is to be completed third year of its life cycle, and it attain a length of 25 centimeter to 25.9 centimeter in length up to completion of the third year. This mackerel, these are to be mature first time. First time it is to be mature and ready to spawn the eggs or to breed the eggs. That is, these mackerel, these Rastraliger canavata of Andaman area, Andaman Islands, it is to be reported to attain first maturity. It is to be reported to attain first maturity at 25.9 or about 25 to 25.9 centimeter when fish is to be completed third year of its life cycle. Means these are Rastraliger canavata, these mackerel, these are to be spawned, these are to be mature first time, either in second year or either in third year. These fishes, these are to be spawned, these are to be ready for breeding. When these are to be completed its life, completed its age as second year or it is to be as in third year, and in second year or last days of the second year and the last days of the third year, these fishes, these are to be ready or it is to be for breeding, it is to be mature for, that is, breeding condition. With this, these are the mackerels we have observed, we have seen. These are the mackerel, that is Bangda or Bangdi. These fishes, these are to be mature in Andaman Islands after the third year, and length is to be 25 to 25.9, and in west coast at Karwar it is to be mature 22.4 centimeter after the completion of the second year. This is, that is, sexuality and first maturity of mackerel or Rastraliger canavata. First point in reproduction. Then next point of reproduction we have seen next period. Yes, thank you.